It was a few years ago, during the chaotic time of the 2025 pandemic, when I found myself in an unsettling situation that I still can't quite shake off. I don't talk about it much, mostly because the story brings with it the kind of discomfort that lingers long after the moment has passed. At the time, I was furloughed and struggling to make ends meet. My stimulus check was running out fast, and the reality of my situation was starting to weigh heavily on me. I had recently split with my boyfriend. Living together during lockdown had revealed some uncomfortable truths. He was deeply into Jordan Peterson, and I'd even caught him slipping into QAnon conspiracies before I blocked him on Facebook. The breakup didn't hit me as hard as I thought it would. What hit harder was the constant anxiety about my finances, the pressure of job hunting, and the looming uncertainty of what would come next. I'd fall into a routine to cope. Wake up, make a strong black coffee, check job listings for remote work, and then when nothing turned up, I'd go to one of the few gyms still open. The workouts were my escape, my way of feeling like I had some control over my body, even when everything else felt chaotic. That day, however, was different. Just before I opened my crossword app to distract myself, a message popped up on my Facebook. Exciting new job opportunity, flexible hours, and daily earnings of up to $1,000. I clicked on it, intrigued, but as soon as I read the message, the excitement quickly turned to unease. It was a multi-level marketing scheme, selling overpriced makeup. I blocked the account and moved on. But when I arrived at the gym later, things started to feel off. There was a new woman at the gym that day. She was more interested in her phone than in working out, scrolling endlessly, probably picking the perfect selfie to post. I tried to ignore her, focusing on my arms as I pushed through my routine. But then I noticed her again at Starbucks. She was sitting at a table not far from me, staring at me with an odd intensity. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling of discomfort began to grow. Something about her gaze was familiar. I couldn't place it, but the longer I sat there, the more it gnawed at me. Why was she staring so intently? I couldn't shake the sense that something wasn't right. As I sipped my frappe, scrolling through my phone, I saw something that made my heart race. More scam messages. 5 different accounts, all with the same profile photo. A woman in her 30s with lip fillers and flawless makeup. Her face was too perfect, too rehearsed. I had seen the same photo across all the accounts, and every message was nearly identical. And then it hit me. The woman from the gym was sitting just a few tables away. My blood ran cold. There was no way this was a coincidence. She had to have seen me there. Maybe she knew my name from the drink orders. Maybe she had pieced it all together from my social media accounts. But how? How could she know so much? The more I thought about it, the more my mind spiraled. I googled the makeup brand she'd been promoting, but there were 0 results. No online presence, no digital footprint. It was a scam. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much time she must have spent researching me. The feeling of paranoia began to sink in. My stomach churned as I tried to connect the dots. She'd been messaging my friends and coworkers, asking strange questions about me, giving them this unnerving vibe. My heart thudded in my chest. The air felt thicker, heavier. She knew too much. Was this all part of some strange scheme? And what was her real motive? I quickly grabbed my things and left the coffee shop, walking briskly, trying not to draw attention. But I knew she was behind me, following me closely. I couldn't let her catch up, not with the weird, sinking feeling in my gut. I needed to get away from her as fast as I could. I ran for the subway, my footsteps echoing in the quiet streets. I could hear her heels clicking on the pavement behind me, growing louder, closer. She was still there, still following me. My pulse quickened as I ran past the turnstiles, leaping over them with a surge of adrenaline, leaving her to fumble with her ticket. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I dove into the crowded subway car just as the doors began to close. She wasn't far behind. I looked at her once, my breath ragged, and then turned away, walking down the packed train toward the back. I felt her eyes on me, burning into my back. The doors shut and the train jerked to life, carrying me away from her. When I finally reached my stop, I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be alone. But I had to. It was over for now. But I knew it wasn't truly over. Even now, I keep myself off the grid. No social media, no selfies. I'm careful. I still can't shake the feeling that she's out there stalking someone else, still obsessed with what happened. Maybe she found someone new to fixate on, or maybe she's still looking for me. I don't take chances anymore. And I don't want to know what will happen if she escalates again. But one thing I do know. The darkness is always watching. The darkness is always watching. If you want more stories that send chills down your spine, like, share, and subscribe to Dark Echoes. Stay safe or don't. We'll see you next time. It started out innocently enough. I was living in the UK minding my own business when I received a message from someone I'll refer to as Handcuffs. She had found me through MySpace, a relic of the past, but she seemed to have a fascination with British culture. She started by making jokes about British slang, calling me old chap, and poking fun at the stereotypical image of British people. To be honest, I thought it was endearing, especially coming from a Californian girl who looked like she walked straight out of an alternative magazine. Her odd charm and enthusiasm for British humor made me feel like the rumors were true. American girls really did dig British guys. Her name wasn't really Handcuffs, but let's just say it was a name that seemed to fit the personality. She claimed to be a model on a site I'd never heard of, something I couldn't even mention, but let's say it was a site known for Unalive lasses, if you catch my drift. She sent me some photos, glamorous, seductive, and revealing, but the kind of photos that seemed too polished, too perfect. There was something strange about them, but I ignored my instincts, thinking it was just the allure of a beautiful stranger. After all, why would anyone fake being a model, right? We chatted for a while and the conversation felt real. She confessed her feelings for me, and I, being a foolish young man, was flattered. Who wouldn't be? A stunning Californian model falling in love with a guy like me. But then things started to get weird. Hook. At first I brushed it off, but the more she spoke, the more my gut began to churn. What was the strange connection? Was she who she said she was? One day she mentioned flying me out to California to meet her. The excitement in her voice was palpable, and to be honest, I thought it was a dream come true. Who wouldn't want a free trip to California, right? But then the story shifted. She claimed that due to some issue with exchange rates, she couldn't buy a ticket from the UK to California using her own account. Instead, she'd need me to pay for the ticket in pounds and she'd pay me back in dollars. It seemed fishy at best. Why would a Californian model have such knowledge of UK bank accounts? That's when my suspicion began to grow. I asked her to send the money first, but she insisted it was fine. She said she had already made an international transfer, and I should send the money now. But something wasn't adding up. I told her I'd have to wait for the transfer to show up before sending her anything. She wasn't happy with that. Her response was frantic, defensive. Something about how if I didn't trust her, I didn't really love her. The guilt trip was on. My mind raced, but I stood firm. She claimed it was no big deal, that everything was taken care of. But then, things escalated in a way I hadn't expected. Days went by and I kept my guard up. But then, the moment I had dreaded arrived. She claimed that she had already bought the tickets. I felt a strange sense of relief, but then it came. She said she couldn't send the tickets to my address, so I'd have to pick them up from the airport on the day of the flight. I pressed her, asking for a receipt or a confirmation email. That's when she lost it. The fury in her messages was something I've never experienced before. She screamed at me, calling me every name under the sun. The words were incoherent, rage-filled, and barely legible. At that moment, it didn't matter whether she was real or not. My gut told me to get out before it went any further. I blocked her. Moved on. Or so I thought. Hook. I felt a brief sense of relief, thinking I had dodged a bullet. But I was about to learn just how wrong I was. A few days later, I was walking through town with a couple of mates when I heard a voice. A woman's voice, calling my name. There was venom in it, something dark. I turned around. And there she was. Lucy. Lucy was an ex-girlfriend from years ago. A loud, brash Wiccan girl I had briefly dated when we were in year 8. We hadn't spoken in years, and honestly, I never gave her a second thought. But there she was, marching toward me with her wild, unkempt hair, mascara smeared around her eyes, and a pentagram necklace swinging around her neck. I was confused, but it only took a second to realize this wasn't just a chance meeting. She stopped in front of me, jabbed me in the chest with her finger, and started screaming. "You don't even know what you missed out on," she spat. "You'll regret not paying me for the heartbreak." The words she spoke made no sense at first, but then she dropped the bomb. She started yelling about how she was going to curse me, that my genitals would fall off. Then she mentioned something strange, details that only handcuffs could have known. My stomach dropped. My heart raced as everything clicked. Handcuffs wasn't some Californian model. It was Lucy, the Wiccan girl from years ago. She had catfished me, manipulated me, and now she was standing in front of me, convinced that I had betrayed her in some cosmic way. Before I could react, Lucy went ballistic. She lunged at me, throwing herself onto me with all her weight. I felt my head hit the corner of a granite bench with a sickening thud, and everything went blurry. Then I felt the sharp pain, over and over again, as she stabbed me with something. It was more painful than I could have imagined. It wasn't a knife, but a safety pin. Tiny, repeated stabs. The world blurred even more as I fought to stay conscious. My friends pulled her off, dragging her away, but the damage was done. I could feel the blood pooling on the ground, the darkness creeping in. I woke up hours later, the sterile smell of a hospital room filling my senses. I had a fractured skull. A massive bleed on my brain. My chest was sore, bruised from the safety pin stabs. Lucy apparently had fractured my skull when she pushed me. She was mortified. Her parents insisted on sending her to rehab, as they found out she had been struggling with addiction for some time. I was given a choice about pressing charges, but I didn't. I couldn't. Lucy, for all her craziness, eventually found a semblance of normalcy. She turned her life around, and now, years later, we occasionally keep in touch for reunions. She's a mother of two, a fitness instructor, and living a life that seems far from the wild, dangerous woman who once almost ended mine. It was around 8 years ago when I first met Jeff. He started as just another name in the long list of random online interactions, a stranger in a sea of usernames and avatars. My friend Allison warned me about him from the start. She'd been talking to him first, met him through some Facebook group, one of those niche places for fans of obscure comics and dark, edgy content. At first, he seemed harmless enough, just another overzealous fanboy who wanted to bond over shared interests. But something was off. Allison told me he was into swords, horror, and all the usual edgelord stuff, things like Sin City, Firefly, and ARMA. His favorite video game? BioShock Infinite. Now, I have nothing against BioShock Infinite, but that choice of game stuck with me for a reason I couldn't explain at the time. But Jeff wasn't the worst. At least not yet. When he finally started talking to me, I didn't see the harm. I was bored, restless, stuck in my own world, and his messages seemed like a distraction from the usual monotony. We started chatting about the things I liked. Comics, anime, movies, video games. I told myself, what's the worst that could happen? But then it began. Little cracks, subtle and easy to overlook at first. Jeff's opinions on the things we both loved were oddly uninformed. He was quick to make sweeping, definitive statements, like how Batman was his favorite superhero because his whole rogues gallery was totally grounded and normal. If you've ever been a true fan of Batman's comics, you'll know how ridiculous this is. His villains are as far from normal as it gets. But I didn't let that slide. Being the nerd I was, I pointed it out politely, hoping for a good discussion. His response? He flew off the handle, yelling that the comics didn't even matter. It was all about the movies, he insisted. This was only the beginning. Soon enough, his messages began to feel less like normal conversation and more like an obsession. I should have listened to Allison, should have trusted my gut. But no, my boredom kept me engaged. As the days passed, Jeff's messages grew more intense, longer. After a week, he was already talking about how close we were, how much I meant to him. We had only been talking for a few days. I didn't see it coming, but Jeff was already slipping into a zone of unhealthy attachment. He started sending me paragraphs of affection, acting as though we had known each other for years. The worst part? He was imagining a relationship that didn't exist. I had made it clear, I wasn't interested. But that didn't matter to Jeff. In his mind, we were already connected, bound by some cosmic force. He began to talk about how he had broken the heart of his last girlfriend because she wanted to sleep with him, but he had lectured her about how that was wrong. It wasn't until much later, during one of his rambling monologues, that he casually mentioned something deeply disturbing. He'd been dating a 16-year-old girl. Hook. That was the moment I felt the blood drain from my face. This was more than just some quirky guy with bad opinions. This was someone deeply disturbed, and I had unwittingly gotten caught up in it. The more I tried to distance myself, the more Jeff seemed to grow attached. His attempts to impress me became more absurd. He would lecture me about how he was too good for his exes, how he had a psychic connection with his grandmother. The last straw came when he started sending messages about how he was dying. He would tell me in vivid detail about chest pains, trips to the emergency room, and how he might not make it. It was all a show. The thing is, when someone tells you they're in a life-threatening situation, you want to believe them. And the first few times I did. But there was no follow-up, no resolution. It was always the same dramatic build-up. Never any closure. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Jeff started spinning stories about his elderly relatives on their deathbeds. Each month it was someone new. His granddad, his grandmother, his brother, his dad. None of them ever died, and none of them were ever mentioned again. It was just another twisted tale for attention. It was becoming too much to handle. His constant need for validation, his selfishness disguised as caring, his cries for help that went nowhere. Every day it was something new. I couldn't take it anymore. One day I finally snapped. I told him that this was too intense, that I wasn't looking for this kind of relationship. I thought maybe we could try being friends, but that wasn't good enough for him. He started ranting about how we were supposed to be best friends forever, and how I was the one rejecting him. The anger in his words made me physically uncomfortable. I couldn't handle it anymore. I blocked him. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next message came through Steam, the platform where we'd been playing games. It was short but chilling. "I'm sorry for what I'm about to do." At this point I was scared, but I knew it wasn't physical harm. We lived in different countries. He couldn't get to me. But still, the idea of his rage was unsettling, and I knew I had to cut ties completely. He followed it up with an incoherent rant on Facebook, where he quoted BioShock Infinite, claiming I was Elizabeth, trapped in his cage. It was insane. He was delusional, unable to accept rejection, twisted in his own fantasies. It was a toxic presence that I couldn't shake. And still I couldn't help but wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't blocked him? Would it have escalated further? Looking back, I laugh at how ridiculous it all was. But when you're in it, when you're constantly being bombarded with these delusions and manipulations, it's terrifying. The emotional toll it takes is hard to explain. The relief I felt when I finally shut him out of my life was immense. But that toxic energy still lingered. And just when I thought it was over, my third friend, against all warnings, decided to befriend him. The last I heard, she had cut him off. He tried to convince her to cheat on her husband with him. The darkness is always watching. If you want more stories that send chills down your spine, like, share and subscribe to Dark Echoes. Stay safe or don't. We'll see you next time.